Hi, I'm John with Let's Go Now Adventures, and in today's video we're going to be putting all those knots you've been practicing, we'll put them to work so it's knots in action. We're going to be putting up a flying tarp. This is a great way to demonstrate several different knots. We're going to be using the bow line, the taut line hitch, and a modified trucker's hitch, to name just a few. So here we go. So one piece of equipment that I always travel with is a tarp. Tarp's wonderful. You can use it for shade and you can use it for rain. You can make a tent out of it, so anytime you might need a shelter, it's always handy to have with you. I take a tarp with me everywhere I go. So Holly, just look with me down here. What I've got is a big 12 foot by 12 foot tarp. This goes with me every camping trip we go on. And what I've done, if we look close right down here, is on the underside of this tarp, I've sewn in some loops. And what I'm doing is I'm running the yellow cord all the way down corner to corner. And this is going to be my ridge line for this tarp. So for the tarp's purposes today, the yellow line is going to be my ridge line, and the black lines will be the other ones that we use to tighten it up. The thing I want to do is my ridge line, I actually want it to run underneath the tarp. Now, one thing with this ridge line and this design that I'm going to be using today is the ridge line is going to be incredibly tight. Now, I haven't actually tied to any of the grommets of the tarp, so the ridge line runs straight through. It's just threaded through the corner grommets and then the loops that I've sewn into the tarp from the underside. Next step, turn the tarp over. So on this first knot, I'm going to tie one end of our ridge line with the bow line. So the bow line in review. So what we'll do is we'll make a loop. We've got our working end going over the top. And so if we went with the working end over the top, we'll come up from the bottom. We'll go over, under, back over, and then back out. And then we'll tighten that. And there's our bow line. So if you'd like to learn and get a little bit more detail on how to tie the bow line, I'm linking our video on how to tie the bow line up in the upper corner right up there. So here's the bow line on one side. Done as I've taken my ridge line. If you follow along, I've looped it over a branch hanging out of this tree, and that's going to be where I'm going to pull some tension from. So I'm going to come way down here, and this one I'm going to do is a modified trucker's hitch. I'm going to put an alpine butterfly down the rope a little bit. Alpine butterfly. Up towards the tree from the other alpine butterfly, I'm going to tie a second one, because I require a fixed loop on both sides for this purpose. So this, in the trucker's hitch, just as a review, we used 2 alpine butterflies. So what we'll do is we're going to make a loop, and then we'll make a second loop, and then we'll take our loop over, we'll fold, and then we'll come through the center loop, and there was one. So I tied a compound trucker's hitch using the alpine butterfly. If you'd like a refresher course on the alpine butterfly, it's going to be linked right up here in the corner. It'll take you right to the video on the alpine butterfly. And what we'll do is we'll take our working end, come all the way down to the lower of the 2 loops, come back up, and before it gets too high, I'm going to run my working end through the upper of the 2 loops. is half hitch that off. So the reason I use this hybrid method of the trucker's hitch to pull this, meaning that it looped back around, was so that I could pull down and use my weight and gravity to get a little extra tight. So that's why we did a double looped trucker's hitch. So I was pulling down rather than pulling back up towards the tree. The tarp that's now just able to slide up and down on the ridgeline. The ridgeline remains tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a taut line hitch. So once around, twice around, three times. We'll tighten that taut line hitch up and we'll just slide it right on up our ridge line. We'll tighten that and that's going to stay tight. Okay, so in review, the taut line hitch, we're just going to go around our fixed object. In this case, I'm tying the taut line hitch around the ridge line. So we'll go around and around, and we're going back because we're going to be pulling the knot this way to add tension. Now, maintaining the same direction, we'll go around again, but on this side of the knot. So there we go. We'll tighten that up. And then we'll pull it tight. I've got a link to the video on how to tie a taut line hitch right up in the upper corner. So now we'll tie another taut line hitch on this side. Once around, twice around, third time. Pull that tight, we'll dress it. And now all we'll do is slide that black rope out along the ridge line, and we'll just tighten up the tension on that tarp. I'm actually tying to the nylon strap that comes off of the corner. I'm tying to the strap, not the grommet. This strap is much stronger than the grommet is. So I've got a bowline right here, and we'll just take it and we're going to extend that out. We're out of rope. What are we going to do? You guessed it, the sheet bend. I'm going to put a sheet bend in. Let's make it a double sheet bend. If you'd like a little bit more information on how to tie the sheet bend, I've linked the video on how to tie the sheet bend up in the upper corner. So here's the sheet bend. So this is the sheet bend in review. We make a loop, and in this case I am using two different sized ropes. Make your loop out of the larger of the two ropes and do all the working with the thinner. So we're going to come up through and then we're going to go around. Once again, we want to make sure our tails are on the same side. We'll come around, go underneath, then back over the blue rope, but under the red rope, and then we'll tighten that up. And there's your sheet bend. So now that we're going around a tree, let's come back up here and make it easier to tie. So if you notice that I've got the four corners of the tarp laid out, just so happens that I've got the four corners laid out which are roughly north, south, east, and west. And we're working with the westmost corner right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the west one First, I'm tying it off a little bit lower so that the western corner of the tarp is a little bit lower to give us some afternoon shade when it really gets hot. But what I'm going to do with this one is, because it's a non-tension line, I'm going to tie a taut line hitch. Now, if I really wanted a lot of tension, I would tie a trucker's hitch. But I don't. I want to be able to loosen this one if I need to. So I've got the first two loops of my, but what I'm going to do on this last one is I'm going to slip that last loop on this taut line hitch. So what I can do is I can tension this with a taut line hitch, but if I wanted to lower this, the west end down, all I'd have to do is come back out and release this just a little bit. But for now, let's tighten it up. Now remember, I haven't done, if this is the west end, the last end to do is the east end. So I don't want to pull this too tight yet. So for the purposes of this video, I ran out of trees. So this isn't probably the smartest thing. With a good windstorm, puts up a lot of force and could probably pull the ladder right off the back of the trailer. But let's imagine that this was a tree. So what I'm going to do is put another taut line hitch on this side. And I'm going to slip that one also. There we go. One of the reasons I tied a taut line hitch on these ridgeline corners is so I could take that knot, and if the wind came up, I could go to both sides and in a hurry drop those back. We could tie the thing up, just wrap here, and then we don't have a sail anymore. When the wind stops, it's just as easy. We can grab our taut line hitch and just pull it on back out. Other side, when it's no longer windy, just grab our taut line hitch and pull it back out. So today's going to be a hot one, so I'm glad that we were able to put the tarp up. But it wasn't putting the tarp up that was the main purpose of today's video. The main purpose was to show off how we used those knots. We used a bowline, a taut line hitch, a trucker's hitch, and a sheet bend, and an alpine butterfly to put up this tarp today. Probably used more knots than I needed to, but the purpose was to demonstrate how each one can be used in a real life, real camping situation. So if you need to, you can go back. We've done a whole series on all of these knots to learn how to tie each and every one of them. Just look back on Let's Go Now Adventures to the Camping Knot series, and all of these knots will be covered in detail. I'm John from Let's Go Now Adventures. We'll see you on the next adventure.